What's up guys, welcome to my monthly builds for November 2019. Today I have an $850 gaming PC build that feels like a $1,000 system, and I have my top picks for this holiday season if you're buying a CPU or a graphics card.
Excellent!
Cooler Master's MK730 gaming mechanical keyboard is the more portable version of their flagship Master Keys 750 and features the same premium brushed aluminum finished and floating key design as well as genuine Cherry MX switches in blue, brown, or red. Use the function keys for on-the-fly RGB LED control, admire the stylish bottom and side light bars, and feel the comfort of the removable wrist rest in a 10 keyless form factor that you can easily take on the go. It's got USB Type-C too, so click the sponsor link in the description for more. So guys, if you're not familiar with this series, every month at the beginning of the month I do a few parts lists for anyone out there who's thinking about building a gaming PC, or sometimes other types of PCs as well, and doesn't know which parts to use to build it. Just FYI, if you're looking for me to actually build the system, not doing that today, but you can check out my builds playlist. There are a ton of systems that I've put together over there of varying shapes and sizes, and then of course I have my how to build a PC playlist as well if you guys are starting off from scratch. If you've never built a system before, that's a great way to sort of walk you through the steps. But today, what parts should you choose for your gaming PC? Well, the other part of this video is I do a straw poll for you guys to vote on every month. So last month I asked what gaming PC builds you want to see in November, and you guys voted for me to build a gaming PC and a turkey. Now to clarify, this was a follow-up on my build of the month for October, where you guys asked me to build a gaming PC and a giant pumpkin, which I did. We actually had a lot of fun putting that together. However, the videos themselves did not do that well, and given that Thanksgiving is a US-only holiday and not celebrated worldwide, I think I'm gonna have to use my veto power on this one. I also really have no idea how I would wedge a gaming PC into a turkey, so maybe I'll still do something slightly Thanksgiving related this month, but I'm gonna go with the follow-up question, which is an $850 gaming PC that feels like a $1,000 gaming PC. That got a lot of votes as well, and that seems like a good build to go forward with. But first, if you guys want to vote on next month's builds, go ahead and vote in the December straw poll. We have actually quite a few new products coming out, new CPUs that are either out now or out very soon. 9900KS, 3950X, Threadripper 3 CPUs coming out, some new high-end desktop stuff from Intel, or maybe just something that doesn't cost a crazy high dollar amount. So pick your poison there, let me know, and hopefully I won't ignore your votes like I did this month. Build of the month for November, though, is an $850 gaming PC that feels like a $1,000 gaming PC. For this purpose, I've gone with an AMD Ryzen build and also an AMD RX 5700 graphics card. Here's my total on PC Part Picker, by the way, $856.32. So I'm slightly over, but I think that's still within the budget range. Let's go ahead and run down the parts that I've chosen. The AMD Ryzen 5 3600 is the least expensive processor you can get that features Zen 2 architecture, which is 7nm, and all of the processors based on 7nm Zen 2 are really nice. So if you want to get in on the ground floor, you got to spend about $195 for one of these. It does come with a cooler in the box, which is the Wraith Stealth, which is a smaller, low-profile cooler. You can definitely upgrade the cooling down the road. For this build, my intent is to get you all of the parts that you would maybe see in a $1,000 build, but of course there is going to be an upgrade path at the same time. So the stock cooler can get you up and running, but you probably would want to update that eventually. The other nice thing though is that the processor itself has 6 cores and 12 threads. It does have simultaneous multi-threading. And just like all of AMD's Ryzen processors, it is unlocked for overclocking, and you can still overclock it even if you have one of the more budget-oriented B450 or hopefully eventually B550 motherboards. You don't need to spend more on the X series boards like X470 or X570, so that allows you to get your entire system up and running for significantly less cash. Next we have a motherboard. This is the MSI B450 Tomahawk Max, and I've recommended the B450 Tomahawk. It's been a standby for the B450 series. Costs about $100 to $110, maybe $115. The Max is just an updated version of this that is guaranteed to ship with an updated UEFI that will work with Ryzen 3000 series processors, because older B450 motherboards need to be updated in order to work with the newer series of processors. This gives you peace of mind. It's still about the same price as the non-Max version of this motherboard. It is finally actually available and in stock at Amazon even. Oh, the #1 new release in computer motherboards. And it's got a real nice feature set as well, including a little bit of RGB accents, and it's got good power delivery, so even if you end up upgrading your processor to an 8-core or a 12-core down the road, you'll still be just fine. For memory, I've gone with the G.Skill Ripjaw's 16 gig kit. That's 2 by 8 gigs, or 2 8 gig sticks in the kit total, and it's DDR4 3600 because you want to go with 3600 speed memory. That's kind of the sweet spot for the Ryzen 3000 series processors. I've had good luck with the Ripjaws 5 series before, however, this is a newer kit. It is DDR4 3600, and it's actually got pretty tight timings as well, cast latency 16, and it's only about $85. That said, if you have any difficulty just plugging in the XMP values and getting this to run at 3600 speed, you wouldn't be alone in that, because reviews are pretty common looking at memory kits and having difficulty running at the rated speed if you're not buying the more expensive memory that's usually based on Samsung B-die actual memory modules. Unfortunately, my research has revealed that if you really want to make sure you have faster speed memory and you can plug it in and make sure it works, there's a price premium for that. And all of the kits that I found that were 16 gig kits, DDR4 3600, and then were either on the motherboard's compatibility list or were confirmed to be Samsung B-dies, are all about $120 or more. So you're spending about a $35 to $40 premium for that. So it's pretty much your choice whether you want to go with the faster speed memory that you know is going to plug in and work and spend an extra 30 or $40, or if you want to go with memory that's rated for a faster speed, but maybe not guaranteed to plug in and work. But even if it doesn't work at the rated speed, you might be able to dial back the timings a little bit, dial back the speed a little bit, and still get it to work, but it's $84 instead of $120 or $130. If I have a complaint about the newest Ryzen 3000 series processors, it is that choosing memory is still just a little bit more confusing than it should be, especially if you want it to run at the higher frequency, which gives you better performance across the board with your processor. But I've already spent too much time on memory, so let's move on. We have, next, storage. And for storage, you want to probably go with about a 500 gig class SSD. You can get this ADATA SU635 480 gig drive for about $45. You can usually find a little bit better price on 2.5-inch SATA SSDs like this one if you're looking strictly at price per gigabyte. That said, little M.2 drives like this, which can be much faster than these drives, 2 to 3 times or more performance-wise when you're looking at sequential reads and writes, don't tend to be that much more expensive when it comes to price per gigabyte. So I always say reality check and look and see if there's any nice NVMe M.2 drives that are about the same capacity for just a few dollars more. That said, for $45, you can get your operating system, some programs, some games loaded up on this and still have some space to spare. And it's really easy to add more storage to your rig if you decide to do that in the future. And hey, again, $45 is not bad. How much for the... Oh my gosh, or just get the 1 terabyte version for $85. That's also a very good price per gigabyte. But that would take us over the $850 price that we're aiming at for this overall build. All right, let's talk about graphics cards next. We have the XFX Radeon RX 5700. The RX 5700 is a very good graphics card for the price, and you can get it for less than $300 if you're willing to go with the reference design from AMD, which is not the best design, but it's not horrible either. If you're keeping an eye out and you find some other designs that maybe have an open design with multiple fans, just double check reviews to make sure you're not getting one of the duds. There are some poorly designed 5700s and 5700 XTs out there as well. Just remember, if you're looking at the same graphics card, you're comparing one 5700 to another 5700, the core performance is going to be there with both cards. If you're looking at different cooler designs or different designs for the PCB and power delivery, it's really just a margin of a few percentage points that makes the difference between those. So don't spend $40 or $50 more on a higher end 5700, because at that point you might be wanting to just upgrade to a 5700 XT, or maybe looking at some of the NVIDIA cards that are available. I'm going to come back to graphics cards in the second part of this video though. For now, let's round this build out. We need a case, of course. I almost went with the NZXT H510 again, which you can find for about $70 and does come with 2 fans included. The Fantex Eclipse P350X though is also a really nice case in this price range. Has some nice RGB accents. It's got a good layout internally with some cable management space there, as well as removable dust filters for the power supply. It has tinted tempered glass. It's got a couple 3.5-inch accessible drive trays in the front. I like this case. If it has a downside, it's the fact that it only comes with a single 120mm fan. So to combat that, I've also added another fan, just a 140mm Be Quiet fan. Be Quiet makes really nice, very silent fans, so that's why I went with this. It's about $12.50 over on Super Buys, so you can find cheaper fans out there, but I did want to just finish out this build with a nice complement of fans for the case. You also are going to need a power supply for your build, so I have this EVGA GD. I'm calling it the goddamn series. They launched in 29. I don't know if I can do that or not, but this is a 700 watt 80 plus gold certified power supply for $55 after a $20 mail-in rebate. For this set of features, you're probably going to spend $70 to $100, so this was just a good deal that I found and spotted that's out there. You only really need a 550 to 650 watt power supply for this system. 80 plus bronze rated is just fine as well. Just make sure that the cables on the power supply are all black so that they're not going to clash. And then of course you have the option of going modular or non-modular, but again, you tend to have to spend a little bit more for that. So this is non-modular, so you do have a big grip of cables there, but since the case we have chosen has a nice basement down in the bottom, it's going to be easy to tuck those away and hide them. So there it is, my $850 build that is going to look and feel like a $1,000 build, coming in for the price of $856.32. You can ignore these warnings down here about the AMD B450 chipset motherboard potentially not being compatible, because that is again the point of the Max, is that it is compatible with the Ryzen 3000 series processors. Now at this point I would normally do a second build. I usually do 2 builds. Sometimes I do more than that, but I've decided to do things a little bit differently since it's November, since a lot of people are looking to build systems right now, and because I am planning to do another set of builds parts lists later this month that's going to be sort of supplemental to this. So for those of you who are just starting to figure out what you want to build when it comes to a gaming PC, there are 2 parts that I think are sort of core and fundamental to any build that it's helpful to figure out from the get-go, and then those will kind of dictate what other parts you install on your system. Those parts are the CPU and the graphics card. So what I'm going to do is go down a list and tell you which processors I would recommend right now for anyone building a system that's anywhere from $500 to $2,000 in total price, and then I'll talk about what graphics cards I recommend, and I'm going to go by price point. So for processors, I have a list of CPUs from AMD and a list of CPUs from Intel. I am not going to argue about the merits of AMD versus Intel. I will tell you guys right now that I tend to lean towards AMD right now because I appreciate the price to performance that you get and the general emphasis on more compute performance. But there are people who are still loyal to Intel. There is something to be said for going with Intel because they do still have very solid gaming performance. So to that end, going from least to most expensive, let's start off by going over my AMD CPU recommendations, starting with the AMD Ryzen 3 2200G. This is what I recommend for an entry-level system because you have an APU or a CPU and graphics in the same device, which means you don't need a graphics card. So you can get a system up and running for $400 to $550-ish, and it's got integrated Vega graphics, which are perfectly adequate for gaming at 1080p. And you can get it for less than $80 right now, $78 on Amazon. There are AMD 3000 series APUs, the 3200G and 3400G. Those just tend to be a little bit more money. They do have a little bit more performance as well. At this point, I think you're looking for how can you get off and running for the cheapest possible price. For that reason, the 2200G is what I would recommend because can't beat that price at $78. That is also a 4-core, 4-thread processor, in case you're wondering. Next on the list is the Ryzen 5 3600. This is the one that I recommended for the $850 build. 6 cores and 12 threads, unlocked for overclocking, Zen 2, 7nm, and a starting price of about $195 over on Amazon. And it comes with a cooler in the box. Not the best cooler, but it is a cooler, which is better than not having a cooler. My next step up from there is the Ryzen 7 3700X, and here is what you'd go for if you need more cores and more threads for CPU compute performance, if you're doing a lot of video editing, rendering, that kind of thing. You can get this for about $330. It has a nicer cooler in the box. It's got 8 cores and 16 threads, still unlocked for overclocking. The 3700X to me is kind of that mid-range does-it-all processor because it's great for gaming, unlocked for overclocking, and of course it's got all those cores and threads if you need to do any heavy lifting with it. Speaking of heavy lifting, if you want to jump up to $500 for your CPU, the Ryzen 9 3900X is really difficult to beat, especially at this price right now. Just go for it, and maybe you can actually even buy it right now if it's actually in stock. Well, you can buy it for $500 at Amazon. You just have to wait for it to ship within 1 to 4 weeks. So make sure you order early or just find somewhere else where it's actually on sale and where you can actually get it shipped to you in a reasonable amount of time. So those are my AMD recommendations right now. And also please bear in mind, I'm not talking about the high-end desktop stuff because that's high-end desktop stuff and it's out of the range for a lot of people. So let's switch over to Intel. If I was doing an entry-level Intel build, I would recommend the Core i5 9400F. And that's because you get 6 cores. Unfortunately, it does not have hyper-threading, so it's 6 cores and 6 threads, but you can get it for less than $150, albeit just a few bucks less than $150. Something to bear in mind with this processor is because it's got the F on the end, means it's not unlocked for overclocking. Also means it does not have an integrated GPU or an iGPU. A lot of people don't use the iGPU at all if they're building a gaming PC because you add a discrete graphics card and then you use the video outs for that. But some people like the iGPU and find it convenient. And for anyone who has never heard of an F-SKU processor from Intel before, that is something that you should bear in mind because that's why they sell it for a little bit cheaper than the non-F-SKU. If you can jump up to the $230-ish price point, you can get the Core i5-9600K, which is still a 6-core processor, still 6 cores and 6 threads. And this time, because it has a K on the end, that means it's unlocked for overclocking, but you do need to pair it with an Intel Z series 300 series motherboard in order to complete the set and unlock the overclocking privileges. That is, again, one of the reasons why I tend to veer a little bit more towards AMD these days, is because if you want to overclock with AMD, you can build a system and then you sort of realize like, oh, hey, and it can overclock too if I want to do that. With Intel, you kind of have to veer towards overclocking, pay more for K-SKU processors, and pay more for the higher end motherboards. That said, if you get all that together, overclocking is a fun experience with Intel as well. Speaking of overclocking, my next step up for Intel is the 8700K. It is 8000 series, but it's still just as good when it comes to performance per core at the same clock speed as the 9000 series processors. That said, you probably do want to overclock this a bit yourself because out of the box it'll boost up to 4.3 gigahertz on all cores. You should easily be able to push it to 4.5, 4.7 gigahertz across all cores, depending on your cooling solution, of course. $355 to $365 is the price that we're looking at right now for this one. And as with all of these Intel processors, if gaming is your primary focus, this is a great solution for that. And especially if you're gaming at a lower resolution. If you want to do 1080p gaming at 240 hertz, for example, the Intel processors are great for that solution. So consider the 8700K if you don't want to spend $500 or so on the 9900K, which is my next recommendation from Intel. The 9900K is still a very good processor, 8 cores and 16 threads, so you don't get as much compute performance at the $500 price point as you do with AMD and the 3900X, but you do get a little bit better gaming performance, again, depending on the resolution that you're playing at. This is also dropped in price just a little bit, available for $472 from Amazon right now, although typically it goes for $485 or so. Another reason why I'm including all these lists and the prices right now is that it's November, and if you're looking at the price that I'm listing right now, and then it's a week or two from now, there might be deals coming out. So if you see some significant price drops on any of these CPUs, that might be a great reason to bite the bullet and place an order. And now that I've gone over CPUs, here is my GPU recommendation list, and here I'm mixing AMD and NVIDIA, but I just have price points listed. I'm going to go down it really quick right here, and then I'll look at some reality pricing on PC Part Picker. If you're going to spend less than $200, I recommend the RX 590 8GB, which you can find for $190, sometimes going up to $210 depending on the version that you get. Yes, there are less expensive graphics cards than this, but my personal opinion is that the starting out points with like an APU, when you're spending about $500, the step up from there, I think you should be investing about $200 in your graphics card. That's my opinion. Feel free to get a RX 570 or something. You can find those for like $130 too. But this is my list, so deal with it. Next up, $200 to $300 price range. We have a couple options. The GTX 1660 Super, which is a 6GB card, you can find for $225 to $260, or the 1660 Ti. Both are 6GB cards. I would get a less expensive 1660 Ti over a more expensive 1660 Super, but I would definitely get the 1660 Super over the 1660 non-Super because it is a pretty significant jump up in performance. Moving up to the $300 to $400 range, we have several options. The RX 5700 is a great graphics card. You get 8 gigs of VRAM, and you can find it for $290 to $340. You can step up to the 5700 XT, which starts at about $380 and maybe goes up to about $400. The GeForce RTX 2060 Super has 8 gigs, whereas the 2060 non-Super has 6 gigs. So definitely get the 2060 Super over the non-Super, but bear in mind that the 5700 XT tends to be faster than the 2060 Super, so if you don't need the RTX stuff, ray tracing and that kind of thing, I would opt for the 5700 XT over the 2060 Super. So if you can claw your way up to $425 to $480, go for the RTX 2070, which is currently seeing some significant price breaks. You still get an 8GB frame buffer. That said, once again, the 2070 Super is faster than the 2070, available for $500 to $540. This range here is where AMD Radeon sort of stops competing. So if you want to go over $500, your choices are limited to NVIDIA. They're still really good cards. They just tend to be pretty expensive. The RTX 2080 Super available for $700 to $800. 2080 Ti 1060 is the cheapest one right now, and they range to $1,400 and above. And here, just to prove my points, looking at RX 590s, here's one for $190. It's even a gigabyte aftermarket version with a dual fan cooler. For the 1660 Super, we've got the Zotac Twin Fan. This is actually one that I tested out. Performed quite well. Nice little small card. Fits very well in small form factor systems. Not a lot of 1660 Supers listed, but 225, 240, 250. Again, I would not spend this much on a 1660 Super because at that point you should probably consider the 1660 Ti, and you can find low-end versions of that for $240 to $260. From there you step up to the RX 5700. You can get entry-level versions for around $290 to $300, and then from there it jumps to $330 for the aftermarket versions. So again, it's up to you whether or not it's worth the extra money to spend to get an aftermarket version. The 5700 XT gives you a nice boost in performance over the 5700. They start at about $380, but again, I wouldn't spend too much over $400 for one of these. Here's the 2060 Super, which is an 8 gig card. Again, I would tend to veer towards the 5700 XT over the 2060 Super, but if you really like NVIDIA or ray tracing supports, then that might be a better option for you. I've included the 2070s here because they start at $425, and that's a pretty significant price drop from their former price of $500. They've dropped in price from $500 because the 2070 Super is now available for $500, and they tend to start at $500 and go up from there. And then your high-end cards, 2080 Super is about $700. The 2080 is still out there. You can find those for maybe $625 or so. I would just get the 2080 Super though, because you have a 2080 non-super. Like that's just sad at this point, right? Finally, of course, the 2080 Ti, if you're a baller, if you got the cash, it is an insanely good card. It's just really, really insanely expensive as well. I guess you kind of get what you pay for. I don't know if this is going to maintain its value over time or anything like that, but it does seem like NVIDIA has enough interest in the 2080 Ti to continue to sell it for that price. So guys, I'll put some links down in the description for as much stuff as possible that I've talked about today. I hope this guidance has helped you in your selection of PC parts. And again, I will be following up in just a couple weeks with some updated parts lists. So if you guys have any suggestions for the price range or specific components you'd like to see integrated, I'd love to hear those comments down in the comment section below. Don't forget to vote for next month's builds. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it and if you want to see more of my content. And of course, if you'd like to help support my channel, consider purchasing some merch. There's a link to my store down in the description. It's real high quality stuff. It helps me out and it gets you some nice gear too. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.